Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be doing some creature comfort upgrades in the new Audi. I'm going to be adding a cell phone charging mount. Actually mounts right underneath there, and then you can hook up whatever kind of cell phone mount you want. I've got one of these wireless chargers that'll just kind of grip it, and it fits on there nicely. And then we're going to run the cable. Last time I ran it down inside, came out under there, ran it underneath the trim up into the cigarette lighter in there, or you've got a cigarette lighter right here you can use, or you can figure out some way to hardwire it. Easy peasy upgrade there. And then while we're taking the dash apart, I also have a rear view camera retrofit. This car did not come factory with one, so we're going to just add the module in. It's aftermarket kit. I'll have links in the descriptions to all the parts and tools I use today. But first things first is we need to pull off our trim. We need to pull out the vent. Well, we need to remove this control panel for the climate control, and then we'll have access to our 4 screws for the radio, and we'll have to access the screen so we can wire in the reverse camera retrofit. So let's get started. First we're going to remove the trim here, and you can use your fingers if you want to, or a plastic pry piece. Either one should actually work fairly well. Just kind of start at the bottom, and it goes all the way across. It is kind of a tight fit in there. You might have to drop your steering wheel. And the chrome trim does like to come off on the vent over there above the headlight switch. But it's a very tight fit up in there, but it will come out. Just be gentle. Okay, that was a little harder than gentle. And then there's one clip here for your hazard lights. And then that whole piece just comes out. And see all these clips. I don't think this has ever been out since it was manufactured. It's the first time out. So now we got access to the screen, which we'll need a little bit later. Next part, we're going to take this vent out, and you can do it by hand. You can make your own tools. I know I've got these little guys. They've got little hooks, and you just kind of slide it in there, and you find a little hole. There's one on each side, and this takes a couple times to get it right, but you just kind of like really twist it so it stays in, and you just kind of wiggle it out. There we go. That came out. It actually doesn't make a whole hole through there. I thought it did. Oh, it does right here, but it doesn't where I was pushing. Okay, there's one clip up on top here. Take that out, and that's your vent out. Now we have access to the top 2 screws, and the bottom 2, this whole climate control panel just pulls out. There's actually some holes down there, and if you just reach down, pull up, pull out, that just pops off. And you can disconnect these if you want to, or you can just let it hang there. For right now, I'm just going to let it hang here. And then we've got 4 8mm screws here. Alright, I actually am going to pull this out. So this will be these red tabs. We're just going to pull up. Alright, climate control out. A little bit better access down here. This just slides out once those screws are undone. Access to all the cables and stuff we'll need back there. So for the backup camera, we've got the inline bypass module. Got the backup camera and all the cables required to run that. We got our bypass harnesses, the screen bypass harness. So we just got to find all these plugs, unplug, replug. All right, so took the radio out, and we've got a couple plugs down here. We got the main radio plug. We aren't bypassing any of that. This is going to go down into the climate control area, so it actually plugs in down here into the climate control, and then this plugs in to the back of the radio here. This plugs into the old plug. That's our second bypass. We plug in down here, one for the blue, the other one for the purple. And find a place to hide all this down here, because that's got to come out and connect to this guy. Since the climate control doesn't actually use any of that space, I'm going to use all that space for the box. And we still have access to our wires, because we need a couple of those to hook the camera up. There we go. That should tuck in there nicely still. And then there's still enough room back in there to tuck all these cables once they're reconnected. T20. Got 4 of those. Alright, so the instructions are not particularly clear on where this cable is actually supposed to go. Now, let's try it like this and see if it works. Plug everything back in without re-screwing everything. We're going to test this thing out. So everything's still there, the screen's still there. I've got all my controls for here. These all still work. So let's put it in reverse, see if it disappears. It does. That means it's getting the signal correctly. I don't have the camera hooked up, so, but the fact that it disappears and came back, that's an awesome sign that the wiring inside here is correct. All right, so now we can turn that off and then hook up the rear view camera. Most of this I'm just going to do off camera, because it's just going to be running boring wires. I just got to run, this goes out the front, this goes out the back. I'm going to run it underneath the dashboard and along the kick panel all the way to the trunk. I'm going to run it through the rails on the trunk, and then we'll pick it up where I'm installing the rear view camera. Picking back up in the trunk, I ran the rear view camera cable all the way along the driver's side door sill, underneath, back through the passenger, came out through there into here, and I'm going to run it up the trunk liner with the guard. I'm going to put a couple zip ties on there so it doesn't fall apart. But now I need to remove the covering, and I mean, these flip down for the lights, but I don't see any screws under there, one on each side. Inside here there's a handle with one screw, and then I don't see any screws on the emergency release, but there is kind of a lever to pop this out, and then the cover for this thing just slides on and off. So we're gonna get, like, this side pops off, kind of loosen that so it can slide out a little easier. That pops off down there. We're gonna take these screws off. All right, so we got into the back. There was actually 2 screws. There's one in just a handle cup there, and there was another one in the emergency lever latch. You had to pop this little ball out from inside there, and there was a screw right underneath it. Rather than taking that apart and getting that wire out, I just kind of rotated the whole carpet up and out of the way. And then the back, well, the lever is up underneath here, and there's one plug, just a little lever, and that slides out. And then there's 10mm, 2 10mm nuts up there. They come out. If you can see that, 1 and 2, and then that should just slide out towards the license plate. Jumping back in, I was having some issues. It just wouldn't pop out. It wasn't the clips, they broke off, and it's still stuck in there. I ended up removing this metal bracket that goes across here, and there are some tiny clips, one on either side, and once those go in, the camera just slides out. It's hard to do with one hand, but I got half of it out. I'll get the other half out. That's the OEM garage trunk clicker, and those are those tiny little clips that I was just struggling to get out because I couldn't reach them because of that metal bracket. Anyway, once that metal bracket's off, it pops right out super easy. And the new one, or the one with the actual camera, does not have those clips. So I'm going to replace the metal bracket and then put the camera in. Alright, so I ended up having to take off the license plate just to give it a little extra room, but fit in there nicely. I left that metal plate loose. I just kind of started both those screws in, and then I tightened the 10mm on the back of the latch switch, and then I tightened these down and got a nice tight fit, flush, button clicks, not loose. Looks like it's nice and watertight seal there. Alright, so now I will plug in the lever switch, and then we'll get the camera connected to power and video signal, and I'll show you how I run that when it's all complete. Alright, so I got some test wiring on the camera. There's power and ground video. There's also this secondary power cable you can have, and measuring with the voltmeter with the car on and in reverse, this is actually getting 12 volts to power the camera. However, in reverse, I just have the black screen come out, turns back to normal, back in reverse, only has a black screen. So then I hooked up power to that power cable, the extra power cable, hooked up 12 volts to that, tried it again, same result. So I feel like the wiring that we did in the beginning with the cables and the screen, where on their picture it's got that extra cable lying around, so we're going to rework those cables and try and replicate how they have it. So everything should be fine. We're just going to pull off this added cable, reconnect that back to the main, and then connect this up into the screen. Alright, we got test one. Here's the original. I just got it plugged in to the back, and then I've got that free one, which might end up being plugged into there. I don't know. Let's see if we actually have backup camera. So now we've got no screen at all. Yep, so no screen at all that way. Alright, so now we're going to plug this guy back in here and see what happens. Alright, so now we got this guy up here, and then that plugged into the back of the screen. we got screen back. Let's see if we got camera on. And we got backup camera. Alright, so that's what it was. Let's get this beeping stopped. So instead of those cables that ran from the box going into the back of the radio, they actually plug into the back of the screen, with the original being plugged into the jumper and then the new one being plugged into the screen, rather than this being plugged in down farther and then this being plugged back into the radio. So it plugs into the screen, not the radio. Now I just need to route these cables up to the top here so they can reach the screen, and I'll find a passageway for them to fit. Put it all back together, and then that's job done. We'll reinstall the trunk, also in the same reverse order, making sure those little grommets aren't too high or too low, and then we'll test it out once we're all back together. So we got the everything reinstalled. We got the climate control reinstalled, the radio reinstalled, the vent reinstalled, the trim reinstalled. We still have the screen is working. We also added the phone mount that was in the other Audi, and that just bolts into the top bolt of the radio here and then just mounts up, and it is absolutely solid. And then I just ran the cord down there underneath the trim into the socket that's under here, and just kind of hit all the cable under there, so it's somewhat clean. I might make something a little more permanent, but I don't know, that pretty blends in pretty well. Anyway, so now the camera, it does work shifting into reverse, and voila, it works. It's in color. Even the dynamic steering works. It's kind of hard with the engine off, but everything works. It's nice and smooth. Everything fits. Nothing's bulging out where it's not supposed to. Fit and finish is good. Camera quality is fantastic, and I'm really happy with this kit. I'll do links in the description for all the parts and tools and everything I used for this installation. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.